5 small urns, 1 locked gate, and a question no caretaker on Earth had ever been asked before. Thank you for listening, and if this story moves you, a like or comment means a lot. Now, come with me into a place where even silence has a name. The first thing Samuel Briggs did every morning was count the names that the rain had tried to take. He did it before coffee, before the old heater in his kitchen coughed itself awake, before the town trucks started whining beyond the cemetery wall. He walked Maple Hollow Cemetery with a small lantern in one hand and a cloth in the other, wiping water from cheap stone, straightening wooden markers, and pressing loose soil back into the places where poor graves sagged after a hard night. Rich cemeteries had marble and drainage and crews with clean uniforms. Maple Hollow had Samuel, a rusted wheelbarrow, a shed full of second-hand tools, and a wild apple tree that leaned over the lowest corner of the grounds as if it had grown tired from keeping watch. Most of the people buried there had never owned much. A few had come with insurance papers. Most had come with a daughter, a brother, a neighbor, or nobody at all. Some headstones were stone. Some were wood. Some were little metal plates Samuel had cut himself and screwed to posts when a family could not afford anything better. He knew which graves had sons who visited every Sunday. He knew which wives brought plastic flowers and apologized for them. He knew which names had been almost lost because the town clerk had spelled them wrong, or because no one had remembered a middle name, or because the person had died too far from home. Samuel cared about those things, not because anyone paid him extra. No one paid him enough for anything. He cared because a name was the last piece of shelter a person had when everything else was gone. That morning, just before dawn, fog sat low over the grass. Samuel's boots were wet to the ankles. He was kneeling beside a grave near the back fence, packing soil with the flat of his hand, when the bell at the front gate gave one thin sound. It was not the heavy clang of someone pulling hard. It was a careful touch, almost an apology. Samuel looked up. Beyond the rows of graves, the iron gate stood black against the pale road. A shape waited on the other side. Small, still, wrapped in a torn gray coat that did not belong to any weather on earth. Samuel rose slowly. His knees complained. He wiped his hands on his pants and walked the gravel path toward the gate. The figure did not move away. When he came close enough for the lantern to reach her, he saw that she was young, though not human. Her skin carried a faint silver undertone, like moonlight under ash. Thin lines of darker color traced the sides of her neck and disappeared under her collar. Her hair was dark and braided badly, as if she had done it while running. Her eyes were too bright in the fog, wide with exhaustion and stubbornness. She was holding 5 small urns against her chest. They were not fine urns. They were rough gray cylinders wrapped in cloth, each tied with a strip of faded fabric. A little metal tag hung from each one. Samuel could see marks cut into the tags by hand. The girl looked through the gate at the cemetery. Her gaze moved from the crooked wooden crosses to the small stone markers, to the wild apple tree at the back, to the lantern in Samuel's hand. She spoke in careful English, like each word had been saved for a long road. On Earth, she asked, can the poor be buried under their own names? Samuel had heard many questions at that gate. How much does a grave cost? Can we pay later? Can we bury him beside his mother? Is there any discount if nobody comes to the service? He had never heard that one. He looked at the 5 urns. He looked at the girl. Her hands were shaking, but she held the urns so tightly he thought her bones might crack before she dropped them. What is your name? He asked. She swallowed. Ari Veyra. Ari, Samuel said, keeping his voice low. Are those your people? For a moment her face changed. Not much, just a small collapse around the mouth. My father, she said. My mother. 3 from our village. They said no world would take them. They said poor ash belongs to the reclaimers. Samuel heard the words, but he did not yet understand the shape of their cruelty. He unlocked the gate. The metal gave a dull scrape as it opened. Ari did not step forward at once. She stared at the gap as if kindness itself might be a trap. You can come in, Samuel said. I have no fee. I did not ask for one. I have no papers for land. Most folks here did not have much paper for anything. Come in before you fall down. Ari crossed the threshold. Samuel closed the gate behind her, not to keep her in, but because he had spent half his life closing gates between the dead and whatever wanted to trouble them. His house stood just inside the cemetery wall. It was a little wooden place with peeling paint, a kitchen table scarred by tools, and a stove that clicked 3 times before catching. The town owned the house. Samuel lived there because the caretaker needed to stay near the grounds. If Maple Hollow ever closed, the house would close with it. He tried not to think about that too often. Ari followed him inside, moving carefully, as if every object might accuse her of being out of place. Samuel cleared the kitchen table. He moved a stack of bills, a cracked mug full of pencils, and the folded town notice that had been sitting there for 3 days. The notice said Maple Hollow Cemetery was under review for future property conversion. That was the polite way of saying the town was thinking about selling the land because the living wanted storage units more than the dead needed peace. "Put them here," he said. Ari placed the 5 urns on the table one by one. She adjusted each tag so it faced the same direction. Only then did she let go. Samuel filled a kettle and set it on the stove. He cut 2 slices of bread, spread butter on one, and pushed the plate toward her. Ari looked at the food, but did not touch it. "They have been refused at 6 ports," she said. 3 burial moons, 1 public ash field, a shrine station, a waste barge captain who said he felt sorry, but not sorry enough to lose his license. Who refused them? Everyone with a gate. The kettle began to hiss. Samuel poured hot water into a chipped cup. "Tell me why." Ari touched the first urn. "On Veyr land. Belongs to those who own title. Title belongs to those with inheritance. The poor live on leased ground, work on leased ground, sleep in company rooms under company ceilings. When we die, we cannot remain in the soil. We are listed as unclaimed biological material." Samuel's hand tightened around the cup. Ari went on. "They take the bodies. They take the ash. They erase the name from worker rolls. Then the family cannot claim wages, injury debt, or burial rights. If there is no grave, there is no gathering. If there is no gathering, there is no complaint. If there is no name, there was no person to compensate." Samuel set the cup down in front of her. "And these 5, a mine wall fell. Harrow Mineral Trust called it a minor pressure event. They said the dead were unregistered. My father had worked there 28 seasons. My mother repaired filter masks. The others had hands, debts, songs, scars, names. Harrow changed them into residue codes before the dust cooled." She finally lifted the cup, but her hands shook so hard that water spilled onto the table. Samuel picked up a towel and wiped it without comment. "You stole them," he said. "I kept them," Ari said. There was no apology in her voice. Samuel looked at the urns again. 5 tags. 5 lives cut down to the size of a hand. He had been a disaster recovery worker before his knees and his sleep gave out. He had tagged bodies after floods, after fires, after a factory roof came down in winter. He knew what officials said when they wanted the dead to move faster than grief. He knew the tone of a man with a clipboard explaining that families had to wait outside because the scene was not clean yet. He knew how easily a person could become a number when the room was crowded, the night was long, and everyone wanted the paperwork finished. He had come to Maple Hollow because the dead here moved at a human pace. "I need their names," he said. Ari stared at him. "If they're going into my ground," Samuel said, "they go into my book. If they go into my book, they go in by name." Something in Ari's face broke open, not into tears, but into disbelief. It was worse than crying. Samuel pulled the cemetery register from a shelf by the back door. It was a thick paper ledger, old-fashioned by any modern standard, but he trusted paper. Paper could burn, but it did not delete itself because a distant office changed a field in a database. He opened to a clean page. "First one," he said. Ari touched the nearest urn. "Dallin Veyra. My father. He repaired water pumps after work. He said a village with clean water could survive a bad owner." Samuel wrote the name slowly. "Second, Mira Veyra. My mother. She stitched broken gloves so miners could keep their fingers. She kept the good thread hidden in a flour tin." Samuel wrote. Ari touched the 3rd urn. "Oratal. He was old. He sang in the deep shafts when the young workers shook. He had a bad knee and lied about it, so they would not dismiss him before his debt was paid. The fourth, Selimar. She gave half her ration to anyone who looked hungrier than she did. She could fix a stove with wire and anger. The fifth, Ari's hand hovered over it longer. Nico Var, she said. He went back into the collapsed seam. He pulled 2 boys out before the second fall. Harrow listed him as an unauthorized body in a restricted zone. Samuel finished writing. His handwriting was not elegant, but it did not waver. Outside, dawn had begun to turn the fog blue. Samuel carried the register to the small terminal in the office alcove and tried to enter the burial record. The system asked for Earth residency. He selected Traveler. It asked for a planetary death certificate. He selected Unavailable. It asked for property claim status. He selected None. The screen blinked red and told him there was no recognized burial class. Samuel tried again. Ari stood behind him with her arms folded tightly over her stomach. It will refuse, she said. They always refuse at that line. Samuel said nothing. He opened an older form, one rarely used now, meant for unidentified travelers and disaster victims. He changed the field from unknown to known by witness. He typed each name by hand. Under witness, he entered Ari Veyra. Under caretaker, he entered Samuel Briggs. The system hesitated. Then it accepted the record as provisional. Samuel printed 5 copies. Before anyone could tell the machine to change its mind, Ari looked at the paper as if it were a door in her hands. They are in your book, Samuel said. Now he put them in the ground. He took planks from the shed, the good ones he had been saving for repairs near the south fence. He cut them into 5 simple markers, sanded the edges, and wrote the names in dark outdoor ink. Ari stood beside him and corrected the shapes of 2 letters from Veyr script that he added beneath the English. By the time the sun had lifted over the cemetery wall, Samuel had dug 5 small graves beneath the wild apple tree. The tree had never given sweet fruit. Its apples came out small and hard, but in spring the blossoms were white enough to make even the poorest corner of Maple Hollow look forgiven. Ari stood with the urns. She had eaten half the bread because Samuel had told her, in the same tone he used with stubborn mourners, that fainting was not part of any burial custom he respected. They lowered the urns one by one. Samuel did not know the prayers of Veyr, and Ari said the poor of Veyr were not allowed formal prayers anyway. So he spoke as he did at simple burials when no clergy came. Dalan Veyra, he said. Mira Veyra. Oratal. Selimar. Nico Var. You're known here. You're named here. You may rest here. Ari closed her eyes. When the earth covered the last urn, she knelt and pressed both palms to the soil. Samuel drove the 5 wooden markers into the ground. The bell at the gate rang again before he could gather the tools. This time it was not gentle. Samuel turned. A town maintenance drone hovered outside the bars, its blue message light flashing. The machine did not enter cemeteries. It had no permission to cross consecrated or registered burial ground, which was one of the few old rules Samuel still liked. He walked to the gate and opened the message on the drone's side screen. A notice appeared in clean, official language. Foreign remains flagged. Reclamation claim pending. Do not alter, bury, divide, transfer, or conceal. Samuel looked back at the 5 fresh mounds under the apple tree. Ari gone pale. They know, she whispered. Samuel closed the message and sent the drone away. Then they are late, he said. For the first hour, nothing else happened. That was how trouble liked to begin at Maple Hollow. It gave Samuel just enough quiet to hope he had mistaken it. Samuel made Ari sleep on the couch in his front room. She argued for 3 sentences, then folded without another word. He put the printed burial records in the cemetery office, 1 copy in the fireproof box, 1 in his coat, 1 under the register cover, and 1 in the old map tube, where he kept plot drawings from before the town had gone digital. The 5th copy he carried back to the apple tree and sealed in a small metal sleeve beneath the center marker. By noon, the first official message came. It was not from Earth. The screen in the office lit with the seal of the Veyr Reclamation Office. A woman appeared, older than Ari, with dark eyes, pale gray hair pinned smooth, and a voice soft enough to make every word colder. Samuel Briggs, caretaker of Maple Hollow Cemetery, she said. I am Maris Van, authorized representative of the Veyr Reclamation Office. You are in possession of processed, remains removed from lawful recovery. The carrier, Ari Veyra, is wanted for theft of state biological material. You will preserve the material and prepare it for return. No burial, ritual, display, division, or public registration is permitted. Samuel stood in the office doorway with his arms folded. You are late, he said. Maris Van blinked once. Explain. The remains were buried this morning. By name. According to Earth's cemetery procedure. The silence after that was not empty. It was measuring him. You had no authority, Maris said. I'm the caretaker of this cemetery. You cannot grant personhood to non-persons under Veyr law. Samuel looked through the office window at the apple tree. Ari had woken and was standing near the markers, one hand on the trunk, as if the tree might be the only solid thing left in the universe. Good thing this is not Veyr, Samuel said. Maris leaned closer to her transmitter. Mr. Briggs, this does not need to become a criminal matter for you. Preserve the burial site. Do not move the carrier. Do not alter records. A retrieval team will arrive after jurisdictional confirmation. The screen went dark. Samuel did not move for a moment. Then he heard Ari behind him. You should have let me leave before dawn. He turned. She was holding the edge of the doorframe, so hard her knuckles had gone silver white. Why? Because they will not stop for my parents. Not only for them. She reached into the inner seam of her torn coat and pulled out something wrapped in oiled cloth. It was thin, no bigger than a church pamphlet, bound with a strip of copper thread. This is why they follow me across 6 ports, she said. Samuel took it carefully. The pages were not paper. They were a pale, flexible material, worn at the edges. Inside were lines of Veyr script, stamped marks, numbers, and names. So many names. Death Ledger, Ari said. The true one. From Harrowmine 12. Samuel looked up. You said 5 died. 5 came with me, Ari said. 462 are in that book. Samuel sat down because his knees wanted a chair and his mind wanted a moment. Ari pointed to the first column. True name. Second column, residue code. Third, cause of death. Fourth, last shift. Fifth, supervisor mark. Sixth, compensation removed. Samuel did not need to read Veyr's script to understand the pattern. Names on the left. Codes on the right. People turned into inventory by a clerk's hand. Ari turned a page. If a name is restored by a recognized witness outside Veyr, the family can petition. If enough names are restored, Harrow's accident count changes. Then mine licenses change. Debt contracts change. Inheritance claims change. That is why poor people are not allowed graves. A grave makes a death hard to hide. Samuel thought of Maple Hollow's own poor graves. He thought of the families who came with dollar store flowers because it was what they could afford. He thought of the town notice on his kitchen table. Even here, the poor were always one meeting away from being moved. Ari touched a page near the back. Her voice dropped. There is more. She showed him a line written in a different shade of ink. It had her name, or something close to it, followed by a code. Pending residue. Classification, she said. If they take me, I will be listed as reclaimed material. Not prisoner. Not witness. Material. Samuel closed the ledger. Then we make copies. Ari stared at him. You are not afraid enough. I'm afraid plenty. I just do not see how panic helps the dead. He took the ledger to the back office. The scanner there was old and slow, and it complained about the texture of the pages. Samuel adjusted the light, cleaned the glass, and scanned each page twice. He printed one set, then another. He recorded Ari reading the first 20 names, then made her drink water before she continued. By late afternoon, her voice was hoarse. Samuel had labeled envelopes and placed them in different parts of the cemetery records. One copy went into the fireproof box. One went behind the oldest plot map. One was sealed in plastic and taped beneath the drawer where he kept grave flags. One he gave to Ari. If they take this one, he said, tapping the original ledger, they do not take the names. Ari held the copy like it was heavier than stone. On Veyr, she said, a name must be spoken correctly by someone who knew its house, work, or witness line. If I am gone, some will say the names are marks only. Not people. Samuel turned on the recorder again. Then we keep your voice too. The first Earth neighbor to come was Norabelle. She arrived near sunset carrying a jar of tea and a wool blanket. Nora was 78, though she called that an estimate because she had lied about her age for work so often that she claimed the truth had become rude. Her husband, Paul, had been buried at Maple Hollow 2 weeks earlier in a grave Samuel had discounted and never reported. Nora found Ari beneath the apple tree. "You the girl with the little ash jars?" she asked. Ari stiffened. "Yes." Nora looked at the 5 new markers. "You cold?" Ari seemed confused. "I do not know." "That means yes." Nora put the blanket around her shoulders, then lowered herself carefully onto the damp grass. "My Paul is over there," she said, pointing with the tea jar. "He never had much. Bad back, worse singing voice, owed money to half the living and apologized to the other half. But he has his name on a stone. I come talk to him like he can still hear me. Maybe he can. Maybe he cannot. It helps me more than him, I expect." Ari looked at Nora, then at the 5 markers. "On Veyr, we talk to closed doors," Ari said. "There is no place to stand." Nora's mouth tightened. She unscrewed the jar and poured tea into the lid, then handed it over. "Well, now there is." That night, Samuel slept in a chair in the office with the cemetery register across his lap. At 8 the next morning, Mayor Ellis Grant called. Samuel had known Ellis since the man still had hair and campaign signs that promised careful stewardship of public land. Ellis was not cruel by nature. Samuel had seen cruel. Ellis was worse in a quieter way. He became weak in the exact places where strength cost money. "Sam," Ellis said, trying for warmth and missing it. "I need you at town hall. Bring the foreign burial file." "It is not foreign anymore," Samuel said. "It is Maple Hollow." Ellis sighed. "Do not make this harder than it needs to be." Town hall smelled like floor polish and old coffee. Samuel sat across from Ellis in a narrow office lined with framed photographs of ribbon cuttings. On the desk lay a document with Samuel's name already printed at the bottom. Ellis pushed it forward. "This says the remains were accepted for temporary holding only," he said. "No final veriel. No recognition of status. We sign this. Veyr takes their property, the girl gets transferred, and the town does not get buried in legal fees." Samuel read the first line, then stopped. "This is false. It is a classification adjustment. It is false." Ellis lowered his voice. "Maple Hollow is already under review. Northline Storage has made a serious offer. We keep the front 2 acres for historic graves. The rest gets moved with dignity. Do you know what an interplanetary claim will do? It could make the council close the whole place. Families will have to rebury. You want that on you." Samuel looked at the pen beside the paper. He thought of Ari asking if the poor could stay. "You are asking me to say dead people were not buried after I buried them. I am asking you to protect this town." "No, Samuel," said. "You are asking me to protect its budget." Ellis's face hardened. "If you refuse, I will have to suspend your caretaker license pending review. You live on cemetery property, Sam. Do not forget that." Samuel stood. "I never forget where I live. That is why I know what it means to throw someone out." He left the paper and signed. By the time Samuel got back to Maple Hollow, a notice had been placed on the cemetery office door. His license was suspended pending administrative review. He had 48 hours to vacate the caretaker residence if the suspension became final. Ari stood near the notice, reading slowly. "This is because of me," she said. "This is because a mayor found a pen and no spine. You will lose your home." Samuel took the notice down and folded it once. "Maybe. Then I should go." "Where?" Ari did not answer. That evening, she tried anyway. Samuel found her at the front gate with a pack made from her blanket and a copy of the ledger tucked beneath her coat. The fog was coming in again. Beyond the road, the lights of town looked far away and uninterested. "You were going to leave without the original?" Samuel asked. Ari froze. "I was going to leave enough for you to prove you did not lie. And what happens to you? If I am not here, maybe Veyr stops pressing Maple Hollow." Samuel came to stand beside her. He did not block the gate. "You have a right to run," he said. "You have been running long enough to earn that. But tell me something first. If you go, who reads the names?" Ari's face twisted. "You have the recordings." For some, not all. You told me the way a name is spoken matters. You told me some of those people only still exist because you remember how their mothers said them, or how the mine foreman shortened them, or how the village called them home at supper. Do not make me important, she said. Important people are easier to kill. Samuel looked through the gate at the road. You already are important. Veyr knew it before you did. Ari pressed her forehead to the iron bars. I am so tired, she whispered. Then stop running for one night. If I stay, they will come. I know. If they come, they will dig. Samuel, look back toward the apple tree. Then we make sure they find more than dirt in their way. Ari stayed. The next day, the town began to divide around the dead. So people came to the gate angry. A man whose mother was buried near the north path shouted that Samuel was putting every family at risk. A woman with 2 children asked if alien ash could poison the ground. Someone left a printed message taped to the gate that said Maple Hollow was for local people. Samuel took the messages down. He did not shout back. He answered what he could. He explained that the urns were sealed, that the burial was recorded, that no grave in Maple Hollow would be touched without a fight from him. That is what worries us, the angry man said. Your fight may cost us our graves. Samuel had no easy answer. Ari listened from the office doorway until she could not bear it anymore. She stepped outside with the copy of the ledger in her hands. On my world, she said, and her voice shook but carried, we thought graves were things rich people used to show pride. Then they took ours away before we ever had them. We learn a grave is not pride. It is a place to stand when someone says your dead were never real. No one spoke. Ari touched the page. My mother's name was Ari Veyra. She was not property. She was not residue. She made gloves for hands she knew would bleed anyway. If I lose her name, I'll lose the last place where I can still be her daughter. The woman with 2 children looked away. Nora Bell arrived 10 minutes later, leaning on a cane and carrying a small garden trowel. She walked past everyone, through the open gate, and to the apple tree. She dug a scoop of dark soil from a cloth bag and placed it at the foot of Ari Veyra's marker. From my yard, Nora said. Not much a yard. Still mine. Let her have some. That was all. But after Nora, Ben Carter came. He ran the repair shop near the old highway and owed Samuel money for his brother's burial, which Samuel had never mentioned. Ben brought a box of candles with cracked wax. Then Lena Morris came after her night shift at the fuel station. She brought wildflowers from the ditch behind the pumps. By sunset, the 5 Veyr markers had little offerings around them. Nothing expensive. Nothing official. Soil, wax, flowers, a button, a strip of clean cloth, a cup of water. Samuel watched from the path and felt a painful thing in his chest that was not hope yet, but might become it if handled gently. At dusk, a black car stopped outside the gate. Maris Vin stepped out as if she had never touched mud in her life. She wore a pale coat, smooth boots, and a small badge that projected the seal of the Veyr Reclamation Office. 2 aides stood behind her with sealed cases. Mayor Ellis Grant got out of the other side of the car, looking like a man who had already decided where to place his guilt. Samuel walked to the gate. Mr. Briggs, Maris said, I would prefer to resolve this without spectacle. Then you came to the wrong place, Samuel said. Cemeteries are where private grief becomes visible. Maris's eyes moved past him to the apple tree. No legal person lies beneath that tree. Only recoverable material. Ari flinched as if struck. Samuel did not turn, because he did not want Maris to see that the words had landed. You do not get to rename my dead, he said. They are not yours. They are my ground. They are my book. That makes them my care. Ellis cleared his throat. Sam, let them inspect. That is all this is tonight. A preliminary visual inspection. Samuel looked at the sealed cases. Those are not visual. Maris smiled politely. Signature biohazard samplers. Soil integrity tools. Standard procedure. No digging. If there is no grave, there could be no digging. Samuel stepped closer to the bars. You're not entering tonight. Maris studied him. Your license is suspended. Your authority is unclear. Your town has not confirmed your right to deny access. Samuel reached into his coat and pulled out the printed burial records. My authority was clear when they went into the ground. For the first time, Maris's expression changed. Not anger. Calculation. You have made yourself liable. I have been liable since I opened the gate. Maris turned to Ellis. Then we proceed through. Municipal emergency access. Ellis would not look at Samuel. Tomorrow, Ellis said weakly. We can discuss it tomorrow. Maris did not argue. She only returned to the car. Before she left, she looked at Ari. Ari Veyra, she said. There is still mercy available for carriers who cooperate. Return the ledger. Renounce the illegal burials. You may be transferred to a supervised settlement rather than processed under theft statutes. Ari's voice was small, but did not break. You already wrote my residue code. Maris paused. Ari lifted her chin. I saw it. Maris got into the car. That night, Samuel prepared Maple Hollow as if a storm was coming, because it was. He moved Ari into the storage room beneath the office where old burial records were kept cool and dry. He gave Nora one envelope of copied names. He gave Ben the recording device that held Ari's voice. He gave Lena a map showing where he had hidden 2 sealed pages behind old plot markers. If they take the ledger, he told them, they do not take the names. If they take me, you call Earth Refuge office. Not the town desk. Not Ellis. Earth Refuge. Tell them Veyr is trying to remove named dead from registered Earth ground. Use those words. Ben looked at the gate. You think they will come tonight? Samuel looked at the sky. Clouds pressed low and dark over the cemetery. Rain makes cowards brave, he said. Fewer witnesses. Soft ground. Easier digging. Ari stood beside the apple tree as the first drops began. I can read more before they come, she said. Rest your voice. My voice is why they want me gone. I should use it while I have it. Samuel could not argue with that. So they sat in the office while rain tapped the windows and Ari read names into the recorder. Samuel wrote the English sounds beneath each one. Some names came with memories. Most did not. Ari knew the witness line, the work unit, the family mark, but not the face. That seemed to hurt her more. I should know them, she said after one name. No one can hold 400 lives whole in one head. Then why did they leave me with them? Samuel capped his pen. Maybe because you were the one who would not put them down. The gate. Bell rang at 2 in the morning. This time it did not ring once. It rang and rang in the wind, metal striking metal, as white headlights washed across the front road. Samuel stood. Ari stood with him. Stay behind me, he said. No. He looked at her. She held the death ledger against her chest. They're my names. Samuel nodded once. Then stay beside me. They stepped into the rain. The cemetery looked different at night under stormlight. The headstones shone, and the wooden markers trembled. Water ran down the gravel path in thin silver lines. At the gate stood Maris Veyr, 2 Veyr aides in sealed rain gear, and a compact digging machine mounted on silent treads. Mayor Ellis was not there, but his signature was. Maris held up a permit sleeve protected from the rain. Emergency biological inspection, she said. Authorized by municipal office. Open the gate. Samuel took the permit through the bars and read it under his flashlight. The language was narrow, but dangerous. It allowed inspection for contamination, temporary access, soil sampling, and remains verification if necessary. No removal, he said. Verification may require exposure of container material. That means digging, if required. Samuel looked at the machine. If he refused to open the gate, they would claim obstruction. They might cut the lock, damage the grounds, drag him away before anyone arrived. So he opened the gate. But he did not step aside. You can inspect the path, he said. You can scan from the boundary. You're not touching those graves. Maris entered. Rain slid down her pale coat, but did not seem to touch her composure. You have already lost the authority to decide that. Samuel walked backward toward the apple tree, keeping himself between the machine and the 5 markers. Ari moved beside him, the ledger under her coat. The Veyr aides set down scanning rods. Blue light passed over the wet ground. One device chirped when it reached the fresh graves. Maris looked almost satisfied. There, she said. Recoverable ash signatures confirmed. Samuel opened the cemetery register and held it under his coat to keep rain off the pages. Dallin Veyra, he read. Mira Veyra. Oren. Tal. Silamar. Nico Veyr. Buried by witness. Registered traveler status. Plot, row 17, under the wild apple tree. False classifications, Maris said. Earth classifications. She produced a tablet. Sign this correction. State that the remains were held temporarily and entered in error. Your license can be restored. Your housing issue can be resolved. The town will not pursue charges. Samuel looked at the tablet. On it were 5 lines. Each one reduced a name back to a code. And Ari. Carrier Veyra will be transferred to Veyr custody for review. Ari laughed once. It was a terrible sound. Samuel handed the tablet back. No. Maris's face cooled another degree. Mr. Briggs, do not mistake stubbornness for dignity. Samuel tore the printed permit in half. Do not mistake paperwork for permission. Maris raised one hand. The digging machine rolled forward. Ari opened the death ledger. Her voice cut through the rain. Dallin Veyra, son of Saren Line. Pump repair. Shift 7. Crushed by East Seam Fall. Compensation removed. The machine did not stop. Mira Veyra, daughter of Lona Line. Mask stitcher. Toxic dust exposure. Final injury during East Seam Fall. Compensation removed. One of the Veyr aides moved toward her. Samuel stepped in his path. Touch her, and this inspection becomes assault on an Earth witness. The aide hesitated. Maris did not. Take the ledger. Ari backed toward the tree, still reading. Oratal. Deep shaft singer. Knee injury concealed to preserve ration status. Crushed during rescue delay. Compensation removed. At the front gate, another light appeared. Nora Bell came through the rain in a plastic poncho, leaning on her cane, carrying a candle inside a glass jar. Behind her came Ben Carter with a toolbox. Lena Morris came next, hair plastered to her face, clutching a sealed envelope to her chest. Then 2 more neighbors. Then 3. No one shouted. No one held weapons. They came with candles, copies, photographs in plastic sleeves, and the scared, stubborn faces of people who had almost stayed home. Maris turned. This is a restricted inspection. Leave the grounds. Nora ignored her and stood beside Ari. Ari's voice faltered. Nora looked at the page. Tell me how to say it. Ari swallowed rain and tears. Silamar. Silamar, Nora said, rough but clear. Ration worker. Stove repair. Shared food during shortage. Listed as unregistered body. Compensation removed. Nora repeated what she could. Lena took the next line. Ben took the one after that. Ari corrected them when the sounds bent too far. Each name moved from alien script into human mouths. And once spoken, it seemed harder for the rain to wash it away. Maris's calm began to crack. These readings have no legal standing. Samuel stood in front of the first grave. They have standing here. Move aside. No. The machine rolled closer. Its small blade lowered, shining with water. Samuel felt the old fear come back. It was not fear of pain. It was the fear of failing someone who could no longer ask twice. He stepped down into the wet soil before the graves. The blade stopped a few feet from him. Maris's voice sharpened. Remove him. One aide grabbed Samuel's arm. Samuel did not strike him. He twisted the way he had learned in disaster training when panicked men grabbed rescue workers in flooded rooms. He freed his arm, lost his footing, and fell hard in the mud. Pain went through his shoulder. The machine moved again. Samuel crawled forward and lay across the lip of the first grave, his coat sinking into the wet earth. Ari cried out his name. Samuel lifted his face from the mud. On earth, he said, loud enough for the living and the dead. The dead do not need money to be human. For one long second, no one moved. Then Nora Bell stepped beside him. She was shaking, but she stood. Ben Carter put his toolbox down and stood on the other side. Lena held up the sealed envelope of copied names. More neighbors moved in, forming a line around the 5 graves. Ari stood at the center, the death ledger open, rain running over the pages. Nico Veyr, she read, her voice breaking but alive. Rescue return. Unauthorized body in restricted collapse zone. Save 2. Compensation removed. Nico Veyr, Lena repeated. Nico Veyr, Ben said. Nico Veyr, Nora said. One by one, the names entered the storm. Maris looked at the ring of people. She saw the open register in the mud, the recording device in Ben's hand, Lena's envelope, Nora's candle, and Samuel lying across the grave. For the first time, she seemed to understand that there was no single object left to seize. The ledger was no longer one book. The witness was no longer one girl. The gate was no longer one man's hand on a lock. Maris stepped back. "This is not over," she said. Samuel pushed himself up on one elbow. "No, it is not. But you're done digging tonight." By sunrise, Maple Hollow was full of mud, broken grass, and people who had not meant to become brave until the moment came and found them still standing. Samuel's shoulder had swollen badly. His lip was split. Ari's voice was nearly gone. Nora had fallen asleep in a chair in the office with her candle still unlit in her lap. Ben had sent the emergency report to Earth Refuge office 3 times, then called until a human voice answered. At 9 in the morning, Mara Quinn arrived. She came in a plain government car with no escort, no cameras, and no speech prepared. She introduced herself as an investigator from Earth Refuge office. Her coat was wet at the hem by the time she reached the apple tree. Samuel expected questions about permits first. Mara asked Ari to say her mother's name. Ari, hoarse and barely standing, said, "Mira Veyra." Mara nodded. "And is Mira Veyra buried here by your witness?" "Yes." Mara looked at Samuel. "Is that recorded?" Samuel handed her the register. His hand shook from pain and exhaustion. Mara read the names. She read the burial times. She read the witness line. She read Samuel's signature. Then she looked at the 5 wooden markers and the torn tracks where the digging machine had stopped. Veyr attempted removal after burial. "They attempted inspection," Samuel said. Mara looked at the mud still shaped by his body in front of the grave. "That is not what I asked." Samuel glanced at Ari. "Yes," he said. "They attempted removal." Mara took the death ledger, then the copies, then the recordings. She did not make a show of anger. She did something Samuel respected more. She made a record. By afternoon, the temporary order came through. Ari Veyra was placed under Earth humanitarian protection as a material witness and displaced person. The 5 graves beneath the apple tree were recognized as protected humanitarian burials under Earth soil. The death ledger was secured as evidence of mass identity erasure and labor exploitation. No foreign office could remove remains from Maple Hollow without Earth Refuge authorization. Mayor Ellis Grant arrived near dusk, looking 10 years older than he had 2 days before. He found Samuel sitting on the porch of the caretaker house with his arm in a sling. "The suspension is withdrawn," Ellis said. Samuel looked out at the cemetery. "That all?" Ellis swallowed. "Northline Storage is withdrawing its offer. Or rather, the town is no longer considering it. Maple Hollow is under review for protected status." Samuel said nothing. Ellis shifted his weight. "Sam, I was trying to keep this from getting worse." "It got worse because you tried to keep it quiet." Ellis nodded once, because there was no useful eye left. After he left, Ari came out and sat on the porch steps. For a while, neither of them spoke. The cemetery was very still. The rain had washed the air clean. The 5 markers under the apple tree leaned a little, and Samuel made a note to fix them in the morning. "My parents are still dead," Ari said. "Yes," Samuel said. "My village is still poor." "Yes." "Harrow will fight the ledger. Veyr will call me thief, liar, criminal." "Probably." She looked at him. "You are not good at comfort." "No," Samuel said, "but I am decent with maintenance." Ari followed his gaze to the apple tree. A small smile came and went. In the weeks that followed, Maple Hollow did not become famous in the way people expected places to become famous. There were no grand monuments. Samuel refused 3 donation offers that came with naming rights. He accepted lumber, drainage gravel, archival boxes, and a new roof for the record shed. Practical things. Things that kept names dry. Mara Quinn returned twice. Earth Refuge Office established a narrow but powerful protection. Any remains brought to Earth by a recognized witness, when the home world denied burial rights due to poverty status, could be recorded, named, and held under humanitarian ground protection. The language was careful. The effect was not. Ari and Samuel began the Book of the Kept. They made it from the Death Ledger, but it was not the same kind of book. The ledger had been written to hide responsibility. The Book of the Kept was written to restore presence. For each person, Ari gave the true name. Samuel wrote the Earth spelling. Ari spoke the name into the recorder. If she knew the work, she added it. If she knew a family line, she added it. If she knew a memory, even a small one, Samuel wrote that too. Dalin Veyra repaired water pumps. Mira Veyra saved thread. Orental sang in the dark. Selamar fixed stoves with wire and anger. Nico Var went back. For many names. Ari knew only a work unit and a cause of death. Those hurt her. Samuel wrote them anyway. A name with little beside, it is still more than a code, he told her. Nora Bell came every Thursday with tea. Ben fixed the gate so it no longer screamed when opened. Lena brought wildflowers after night shifts and learned to pronounce 27 Veyr names so Ari could rest her voice. The 5 wooden markers under the apple tree were not replaced. Samuel set them deeper, sealed them against weather, and built a low border from field stones. When Earth Refuge offered polished markers, Ari touched the rough wood and shook her head. They were carried here poor, she said. Let the first thing that welcomed them stay. So the wooden markers stayed. At the front of the row, Samuel placed a small sign, not too large because the dead there had been used enough by institutions. Sanctuary Row. Beneath it, Ari painted 3 words in careful English. Known. Named. Kept. The first new arrival came on a foggy morning almost 2 months after Ari had rung the gate bell. Samuel was again walking the rows before coffee, wiping rain from names. His shoulders still ached when the weather changed. The caretaker house still needed paint. The bills had not disappeared. Maple Hollow still looked like a place held together by stubborn hands. The gate bell rang. Samuel looked up. Ari came out of the office carrying the Book of the Kept against her chest. She no longer moved like someone expecting every door to close. She still carried grief, but now she carried it upright. Together, they walked to the gate. Beyond the bars stood an old alien man with a narrow face and a coat patched at the elbows. Behind him waited a small transport craft that looked as tired as he did. In his arms was a single box wrapped in cloth. Several others stood behind him, poor by any world's measure. One held a bundle no larger than a loaf of bread. Another held a jar with both hands. They looked past Samuel at the cemetery, at the rows of modest markers, and at the wild apple tree in the distance. The old man spoke through a translator that crackled in the cold. Is this where the forgotten can be buried as someone? Samuel looked at Ari. Ari opened the Book of the Kept. Nora Bell, who had seen the craft from her kitchen window and come as fast as her cane allowed, stood beside the path with a candle in a glass jar. Ben Carter arrived, still wearing grease on his hands. Lena came with a bucket of wildflowers from the roadside. No one had been summoned. They came because the bell had rung. Samuel unlocked the gate. The iron opened without a scream now. Come in, he said. The old man stepped across the threshold, holding the box as if it contained the last warm thing in the galaxy. Fog moved low over the graves. The wild apple tree waited at the back of Maple Hollow, its branches bare but alive. Along the path, the poor of Earth stood quietly with candles, making room for the poor of other worlds. Ari dipped her pen into ink. Name, she asked. And this time, when the answer came, the gate was already open.